Hey everybody, and welcome to Indie Quest, a celebration of the indie and obscure. Your podcast all about indie games and just diving deep and nerding out about them. And I'm your host, Josh, also known as Frantic, and I'm here with my co-host, Steve.
Hello, everybody. How you doing today?
How's it going, man? You feeling the spooky Halloween seasons? This is our Halloween special, everybody. I should have introduced that first. I'm feeling spooky. Are you?
I am feeling pretty spooky. I've been playing a lot of horror stuff. Not all indie stuff, but I've been playing a lot of horror stuff. Actually, more this month than I have in previous Octobers. So I don't know about you, but I always start very ambitious when October kicks off. I'm like, I'm going to watch scary movies. I'm going to play scary games. I'm going to do all kinds of spooky related things. And then I lose steam because at some point I'm just like, oh, I can't handle all that adrenaline all the time. I need something cozy. Do you ever get like that?
It depends. Some years I'm feeling it more than others. Actually, my new favorites for the holiday season for like movies, I always watch the Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day 2. I just think they're super fun. That gets me in the mood. But really, video game wise, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a huge horror game fan. I only play the occasional horror game.
Oh, that's okay. I'm kind of the same way with movies, honestly. I like horror movies, but when me and my partner end up watching like the first one of the season, it's so hard to jump into the second because we're like, oh, do we really want to be scared again? So I get my scariness out through games, especially now that I've been streaming scary stuff. Having like a consistent set number of days every week to play them makes sure that I keep the spooky intake rolling.
I love it, though. I love the decorations. I love seeing the costumes when trick-or-treating's the thing, and I love dressing up as a kid. I love the season. It's a perfect time of year, and then the weather changes, it gets cooler, and it's just a nice time.
Yeah, I mean, fall's my favorite season, and October's probably my favorite month. Although I do have to say, just to throw out my complaint for Minnesota seasons here, we were having a gorgeous fall. The leaves were bright, colorful. The weather was like kind of fluctuating between like 50s, sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower. Perfect, just like wearing a hoodie weather for me. And then just yesterday, out of nowhere, we got like 5 inches of snow that has stuck to the ground. And so now it's just completely winter out there. The leaves didn't even finish falling off the trees and it's already covered in snow.
Oh, that's terrible. It kind of jumped the gun on you then, I guess. I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen snow in like 8 years. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Snow is awesome when you're looking at it from like inside a warm house. You're like, oh, so serene, so pretty. And then when you have to drive in it or just go to your mailbox or something, you're like, oh, this has lost its charm.
Okay, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but like, do you have a horror game, like, it doesn't have to be indie, that you just absolutely love and go back to a lot?
None that I consistently go back to. I always try to use the season as the opportunity to play new stuff. There's so many horror games that I want to play that I very rarely, if ever, play one more than once. How about you?
I'm not sure if they're considered indie, but have you ever played Killing Floor? Or heard of it?
I have not. I know the name, but I've never played it.
It's made by Tripwire Interactive, and it's like it's basically like a Left 4 Dead clone, somewhat. You play 4 people, and you survive zombies, but they all have different classes of zombies. There's like a bloater style that explodes puke all over you, and different things like that, like crazy, just classes of zombies and creatures that you have to fight in waves, and there are multiple classes you can level up and stuff like that. So it's a multiplayer game. And they always do some kind of Halloween, like with jack-o'-lanterns all over the map and, you know, orange and black lights and all that type of stuff. And it makes it feel even more spooky. And I'll always pop in there and play a few matches here and there during this time of year.
That makes sense. I do like in any game when they have seasonal events like that. Hearthstone has it. You know, I've played Guild Wars 2, WoW, other MMOs at different times. And they usually have some kind of spooky theming, which I dig.
So yeah, I mean, Overwatch always does theirs. I haven't jumped in this year, but they had some really creepy costumes. But they have a monetization scheme that I'm like, about, because it's all randomized. So it's like, I don't want to get into that. But I do like getting into their playlist and seeing all their maps decked out with spooky stuff, which is always a good time.
But you know where there are no monetization schemes to worry about? Usually. The indie space, all right? So not only are we going to bring you a couple of Halloween-themed, scary indie picks this episode, but we figured let's go full indie with a team of 0 and pitch our own game or pitch our own game ideas. So we've each come up with what we think is a pretty cool Halloween, horror, in that ballpark type of game, something that we'd like to see. And yeah, we thought we'd just, pitch it to the other, talk it through, and see if we can't turn this into a real good, fully fleshed idea. What do you say?
Yeah, this is one of those ideas. I was just kind of like driving. I was like, dude, that'd be so fun to do. So I pitch it to you, and I'm just super curious what yours is. So what is your idea for your indie game?
So I came up with 2. I'll tell you, one of mine feels so obvious to me that it's almost like a stereotype. So I'll save that for later. It's much less fully fleshed out, I think. And I'm curious if it lines up with what yours is. But the idea I had, and something that I don't think we've really ever seen before that I thought would be really cool, is a horror-themed environmental adventure puzzle game. So when I say that, I mean one of these types of games where there's like a big focus on exploration, climbing around in the environments, figuring out how to navigate from one area to the other. Stuff like in the AAA space, stuff like Eco, but in the indie space, stuff like Rime. And what I thought would be awesome is to have this game be set in a large haunted house, kind of maybe like a mansion / haunted house. So like, imagine the story pitch. You and a group of friends go through this haunted house that takes place in this old spooky mansion. You go through, at first it just seems like it's kind of like a normal setup for a haunted house. And then you all leave, and maybe 1 or 2 of the characters have to go back in because they left something, and then you're trying to go back in to find your friend that went in and went missing. And now you're kind of exploring the haunted house / this mansion. I thought it'd be cool to be like, almost like Portal, where you know how in Portal there's all the test chambers, but then you start to go kind of through the guts and through the innards of the test chambers and like see the mechanisms of how they all get put together. Same type of thing, but see how all these like haunted house type contraptions were put together. And so you never really know, is this something that is designed to be a scare? Is this a legitimate scare? What's going on here? I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of mess with the player.
Dude, that's right up my alley. I love that type of, video game, just trying to look in an environment, trying to decide or figure out what the next little slidey block goes here, or what lever does that, just all the environmental puzzle solving so fun. And then having that idea that maybe if I pull this lever, I might fall into a pit, or a monster might fall out of the ceiling. Man, is this like a third-person game, a first-person game, 2D game? How would you do it?
I think I see it mostly as a third-person 3D game, because there'd be areas, ideally, that would be like a little smaller, a little more claustrophobic, maybe a little more traditional horror, but then some larger areas, right? So maybe you transition from working your way through like some kind of creepy maze of mirrors type thing, and then you get into like a cathedral or something, which is a larger, more open environment, and you're trying to figure out how to either solve puzzles or navigate up to like a window on the second floor rafters or something like that. Like a nice mix of more intimate puzzles with larger scale kind of exploration stuff. I don't know if I would commit to this or not, but the reason I like the idea of it being in kind of this combination, like a mansion repurposed as a haunted house, is it lets you really play with what is legitimately threatening versus what is just set up to scare people as like theoretically threatening in a safe space. So you could do similar things with, like a loudspeaker system or like narration or something where you could probably introduce some pretty cool kind of like mind-bending you don't really know what to trust, what's real or not. Kind of mess with the player like that.
Oh yeah, would there be any like actual creatures in the game, anything like that, or do you think that it would be more left up to your imagination type of thing? All
my favorite type of horror games are the ones where you usually don't see the creatures, but they do exist sometimes. I would pitch it as a non-combat game so that if there are enemies, you're mostly having to run away from them. But I like the enemies being kind of this just out of sight but ever-present threat that you need to avoid.
That's awesome. Do you have a name, like a title for the game?
Not what you don't want to take Spooky Haunted House Mansion as the title?
How about Portal ... to Hell?
Dude, that's a good working title as any.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, I love that idea. I can see it in my head. That's when you know it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it could be really cool. I was thinking of what studio would make this game pretty effectively, and I honestly do think that Tequila Works, the same studio that did Rhyme, would be perfect for this because they've already got experience with those kind of like more open environments that I'm talking about, and it wouldn't have to all be indoor, right? You could have some outdoor areas in like cemeteries or mausoleums, or even just like the hillsides near the mansion.
Yeah, it could be like one of those things where you're inside of a mansion, but it look like it's so expansive inside of there. You're like in a new location because it's messing with your mind the entire time.
Exactly right. Get psychedelic with it. So yeah, I think with that experience, plus they've done some other stuff. They've done Guilt, which is that Stadia kind of like, I think it's a horror, not a horror, but kind of like a spooky themed platformer.
Yeah.
And they've also done Deadlight, which is something that I haven't played, but I know also is a like kind of tense, kind of scary game. So I think they have enough experience from some of the other past projects they've done to take a real legitimate shot at it.
That's awesome. Yeah, so that's your game. Portal ... I'm going to say it. Portal. It's going to actually say ... on the case. To hell. All right, well, anything else you want to say about your spooky horror game?
No, but I mean, we need more than one game to play during the season, so why don't you pitch me yours?
Okay, so growing up, I did a lot of jobs in stores overnight, and I always thought it was a creepy situation. Like, you're in there, and half of the lights go out, or most of the lights go out, and you're in there, you're just doing your job, you're stocking shelves, or you're moving pallets around, you're doing that type of work. So, taking kind of a cliche idea where you're in like a super center, like a Costco or Walmart type of situation, and you're a stalker, and it's a first-person game. You're playing from a perspective of a stalker. You go in there, you're just doing your normal job, you start stalking, and creepy stuff starts happening in the store, and there would be a crafting element where you'd have to actually craft different things in the environment to try to escape from these monsters.
Nice. I also was an overnight stalker for a long time, for many years, so this hits close to home for me. Do you think it would be best as like a constructed narrative, or do you think of it more like dynamic, kind of randomized elements? What's the gameplay loop look like?
Maybe it would have both. Maybe it would have a single player where you go through a storyline and then you take all these elements and then make like a randomly generated like Costco that people can do like survival, things in, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I did have a name for it. So whenever we would finish stocking, you have to kind of face up the shelf, make the shelf look flush against, the edge of the shelf, even if it's not full. And at my first job, we always called that blocking, right? So they would say, oh, go to aisle 7, stock and block it. And I'm like, okay, so the name of the game would be Stock and Block, but it wouldn't be stalk, it'd be stalk, like getting stalked by somebody.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
I can just imagine it, like, just think of it. I mean, there would be creatures in the game, but the low light level would make them super creepy, and you wouldn't really see like too much features. They would almost be like shadow creatures that you'd have to like trick to go like one way, or you can like fashion like a spear or something from just various things in the environment, and then have to like stab at them and then run because they're just super, powerful.
I like that too. When I was a a stalker, there was a couple of rooms. There would be like a couple of doors and a couple spots in the store that I just never went to. You know, it'd be like roof access or like this door that's kind of like locked to anyone but the manager. So you could do like some cool playing with what's behind that door, right? Like you could really throw some curveballs at people once they unlock the ability to get into some of these really infrequently accessed areas of a grocery store.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think it would be cool. I imagine that the storyline would have like a through line where you slowly see all of your teammates. This is the idea is it's a brand new store and you're stocking it up for the first time. Then you slowly see all of your teammates like get killed, or like teammates from the store, or you know, grocery partners from the store, whatever you want to call them, your coworkers. I couldn't think of the word coworker. Anyway, you see them all get killed off, and then the last one is your boss, and he is the guy controlling these shadow creatures, and then it turns into like this crazy huge like boss battle where you have to like have different things and trick them, and yeah, I think it would be interesting. There's a lot to work with there.
Yeah, and with it being set in a store, you know, there's so much variety you can have in terms of materials for crafting and making cool stuff. I think you could play with that a lot. But let me ask, is this, I mean, it's obviously born out of some of your experience in the past, but are there other games that you're thinking of that are sort of in the same ballpark that this would be in the same style of, or?
I do like when I played what's that game? Dead Island, and then the newer one from the same studio. What is that called? Yeah, Dying Light by Techland, and they do like this really cool system where you can put different things on different things. So you got a baseball bat, you can put like a razor blade on it, or a buzzsaw on it, or you have like aluminum bat, you can put like electrical wire on it, make an electrical bat, you know, things like that. Machete, you can make electrical. I just like the idea of like different things in the environment. You can just try them out and then craft just unique items.
I mean, it seems like it would be a game that has a lot of replay value too, right? And a lot of emergent moments coming out of the gameplay. I think that is the type of game that would actually get pretty popular if it was done well.
Yeah, and like I said, it could be single player. There could be a storyline. Like I said, all your coworkers die. Then you fight the big boss. But also you can have that same exact experience, but with your friends, and you know, increase the amount of bad guys, change the map, different things like that. Yeah.
I dig it. So you mentioned Techland. Do you think that they'd be well suited to this, or do you have a studio in mind that you think would knock it out of the park?
I do think. I don't know if they're considered indie though, so I might be cheating a little bit, but I do think they would probably be best at this, because Dead Island is super creepy and has that crafting mechanic, and it's just like they do a really good job. I think if they teamed up with somebody like Techland and then like another person that was really good with, like, you know, I think their games are a little janky. I'm not trying to be mean about it, you know what I mean? Yeah. But like some team that's not as janky. I don't know. Maybe just I don't know. I don't know who else they would be with. I'm drawing a blank here.
Well, you know what? Even if they're not considered an indie studio, or their games aren't considered indie games, I mean, we can just say, let's take a small piece of their developers, spin them off into their own company that self-publishes, small team, and then boom, we've created an indie game out of the same talent. Exactly. Without having to resort to AAA publishing.
That's true, and there's plenty of developers out there that make like really cool and interesting games. Maybe they can team up with like Image and Form, the people that do SteamWorld games, and because I feel like every genre they tackle is so unique and different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. They do seem pretty diverse.
Yeah, every time they make a new game, they take that genre and kind of flip it on its head. So I feel like their creative juices with like the know-how from the little team from Techland could make something awesome. I know this is like a mismatch or whatever of a bunch of random stuff, but yeah, you know what it is. You know what I mean?
Hey, you get to mash up whatever you want when you're making your game.
So you said you had a second game. What would it be?
Yeah, so this isn't as fully fleshed of an idea. And I felt like I was stereotyping myself as I was coming up with this idea. But I was like, okay, not horror themed, but what if we have a 3D platformer where the objective is to be collecting candy, as kind of like your collectibles. And then all the different Halloween costumes that you wear give you unlock different powers, right? So you could unlock, powers of like gliding in a bat costume, or maybe you can do some wall jumps or something with a ninja costume. And I was starting to flesh this idea out in my head. And then I was like, I think I might just be describing Battleland Wonderworld that's going to come out next year. I don't think this is an original idea.
I was thinking that a little Hat in Time when when you said the costumes, and then I thought, oh, Costume Quest, but not a J or RPG. You've played Costume Quest, I'm sure you have. Yeah, I actually think that's a pretty solid one. I've played a couple times for Halloween too, which I forgot to mention at the top. But dude, I could see that being a really cool game, and I guess just be like almost silly Halloween and not spooky horror. Like I'm gonna die, right?
Yeah. When I was thinking of it, I mean, you nailed it right on the head. I thought Hat in Time as sort of the gameplay loop, and then I was thinking Costume Quest as kind of the tone, right? It is in that Halloween theming, but it's not scary in any way. It's designed to be fun. 3D platformers basically have to be cute, right? That's like a rule.
Yeah, and why don't they just do a Costume Quest 3D platformer? Done.
Boom. We just wrote it. Ship it.
Yeah. All right. That was so fun. I love that. I love pitching games and coming up with stuff that's never going to happen, but you never know. It's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, hopefully, someone hears this with a lot more talent than we have. They get to making these games. These are ideas you can steal. We are giving these to you. And then, who knows? 2 years from now, maybe we end up covering our own games on IndieQuest.
It's like, yeah, I brought today a Stalking Block. So, nice. That's awesome. What we do here on the IndieQuest, we like to bring indie games, break them down, and recommend them to our audience. And I think that you have one for us today, Steve. What do you got for your first indie pick?
I do. So when we decided to do a Halloween themed episode, and I mean, I'd like to say this will become a time-honored tradition that we do every year.
Yes.
I'm confident we'll be here a year from now, but I think we'll do a horror-themed episode every year. I was like, well, I have to start with a bang, so why not pick what is my favorite horror indie game of all time, Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Ooh.
This is very timely because, a sequel to this game just came out. I'm pretty sure sequel, prequel. The next Amnesia game has just come out. So it's kind of in the headlines again. And I think it's a perfect opportunity to go back and revisit what made the first one so good. So for anyone unfamiliar with Amnesia, it's a blend of horror and adventure game. It's developed and published by Frictional Games. It originally came out on the various PC, I think Mac and Linux at the time, on September 8th, 2010. And when I say it's a horror adventure game, it blends scares, and it's a very frightening game. We'll get into that in a little bit. It blends kind of the traditional horror stuff with some physics and some adventure game style puzzles. So there's some elements of, finding different items that you can combine together to use in certain places. There's some physics style, like how can we move this object around the room, or like weight down this one side of an object to make a platform to get over to that other area. It does a good job of blending how do I traverse the environment with how do I not basically cry because I'm so scared.
I have played this game myself. But it's been years and years, so there's a lot that's a little hazy. You get that effect. Like, I kind of remember parts of it, but I basically haven't played it since it came out. So it's been 10 years since I tried this and played through it.
So you say you're a little hazy. Would you say you have some amnesia about this game? Yeah. So for you, as a reminder to you and everybody else, the game takes place largely inside of this old castle. It takes place in the early 1900s. You control a character named Daniel, and as the title implies, you have amnesia, which is sort of your setup to figure out why you're in this castle, how do you escape, what's going on, basically. And all that information does get revealed as you play the game. You get a really good understanding of what's going on. But the main kind of mechanic is that you have both a health and a sanity meter. Your sanity is affected by basically you subjecting Daniel to scary things in the game. So if you spend too long in the dark, your sanity will start to go down and you'll need to, find a light source in order to basically calm you down. Or if you see something scary in the game, sometimes that can have a hit on your sanity. And then the other big thing is, there are monsters and some pretty messed up stuff wandering through the halls of this castle. And looking at those monsters or being too close to them, being spotted by them, all those will also drain that sanity too. So basically everything you do, because it's a horror game, lowers that meter, and you're trying to balance finding some sort of comfort in all this horrible stuff that's going on.
What's the scariest moment in this game for you? Because the memory I vividly have is the monster chasing you that you can't see, but it's in the water.
Yep.
The water. Maybe that's the one people always talk about, but that just really unnerved me.
No, it's the exact same way for me. And I think that is probably the most standout scary moment is, just hearing that splashing chase you. Oh, it's so freaky.
Yeah.
There's a couple other scares where there's one moment I remember where you are basically, you have to hide in a closet and you're like, the monster's like rattling the outside of the closet. That was pretty scary too. But honestly, when your sanity starts to go down, your character will have hallucinations and stuff. Like you'll start to lose a little bit of your grip on what is reality in the game. And some of those moments can be pretty scary too. Like even just a flash of some image for a second when you're not expecting it is enough of a jump scare to send a chill running down my spine.
You said that the light is really important in the game. Is there like moments where you have to light candles and things in the environment to make it not a creepy factor or get your insanity meter back up and stuff like that?
Exactly, yeah. There are light sources in the world that are sort of baked in so that there's some semblance of safety. But you'll also, in addition to finding objects for the various puzzles in the game, you'll also find either matches or oil for a lantern that you have. And it's a survival horror game, so there's obviously very limited resources and you have to use them very sparingly. But you can use those to light extra candles, extra lamps, and sort of like plot out what areas you think you will need as a safe space in order to keep your sanity up.
Is there a storyline? I'm pretty sure I remember some bits and pieces of a storyline, but how is the story? How is it told, and how do you like it?
It's mostly told through various notes and things that you'll find scattered throughout old documents and things in this mansion. I wouldn't want to give away the story for anyone who hasn't played this at all, even though it is a 10-year-old game. But with the new one being back in the sort of zeitgeist, I assume there are new people finding this game for the first time. But what I will say is you having amnesia is very relevant to the story, and it's more than just a cheap excuse for them to teach you obvious things again. Mm-hmm. There's a very specific reason that you're there. There's a very specific reason you have amnesia, and you do get to learn all about that. The story, it's pretty cool. It has multiple endings that vary depending on some of the choices that you make. And it looks like I have started the new one. I think that the storylines are going to be pretty directly connected. That's awesome.
I love when they do that because it's the original devs making the devs for this are making that new one or made the new one, right?
Exactly. Yes. I'm talking as if the sequel is the first new Amnesia game in 10 years, which isn't true. Mm-hmm. There was Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs, I think it's called, by the Chinese Room. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the studio.
It is.
And that was like a pseudo sequel, kind of like alternate universe version of a sequel to the events of the first one. But it wasn't developed, obviously, by Frictional. So this is the first Amnesia game developed by Frictional since Amnesia in 2010.
Nice. And I want to rewind a little bit. You did mention earlier that there were puzzles in the environment. What do these puzzles look like? What kind of besides weighted puzzles, like you said, is there machinery puzzles, anything like that, or anything you want to speak on with the puzzles?
Yeah, I mean, like you, it's been a long time since I have really played this one, other than just a little bit of a refresher for the show. But it's the type of thing where, you might come into an old chemistry lab in this castle, and you'll find some documents that teach you how to mix various chemicals. You have to explore the environments to find the ingredients you need, and then use some of that chemistry equipment in order to like brew up specific chemicals that'll let you, I don't know, dissolve a barrier or something like that. So the puzzles are very much rooted in the real world. Like you're trying to do things with tools you would actually use to do them, but it's real world with just a little bit of that almost bordering on like fantasy type stuff.
Cool. And I'm assuming there will be puzzles where you sit down, you start doing them, and then a monster comes up and you have to like run away and then go do a little bit more of the puzzle and then run away. It's that type of thing where it's just like spooky even when you're trying to like figure out like logic puzzles and stuff.
Exactly. Or something that they're very good about doing is you'll come across a puzzle and you'll be like, oh, okay, I need A, B, and C to solve this puzzle. And, I already found A on the way here. C is in this room, but B is, through the freaking catacombs or something. And I know I'm going to have to go through a bunch of scary stuff to go find that last object. And so you're often forced into situations that you don't want to do because you need to get an item or get an object from the end of that area, which it's perfect, right? Because it kind of forces you to face your fears.
Face your fears. Sorry, I'm singing Kingdom Hearts 3 soundtrack in my head now. Let's see. Music. Speaking of music, it's a horror game, so I'm assuming there isn't too much of it, but what does it sound like and how do you feel about it?
Not a soundtrack I would listen to, in my free time because I don't want to freak myself out, but it serves the mood of the game really well. I mean, some of the menu theme and stuff is good, but by and large, it's a lot of sort of just like tense, nerve-wracking string instruments and things. They do a really good job. They're very effectively at sort of bringing the music up and bringing it down again at not random times, but at unexpected times. So, you think music will kind of build and build and build, and then it will kind of like burst out and play in the moment of tension. But what it does very effectively is will kind of rise music up and then bring it back down, so you are expecting something to happen and then nothing does. So you kind of like, take a sigh of relief, and then that's when they throw something at you. And so you have to constantly stay on your toes, and the music is a big piece of that.
Awesome, man. Well, any other thoughts, any other things you want to talk about with Amnesia Dark Descent?
I mean, the last thing I'll say is this is probably the most scared I've ever been in a game. The music goes into that. I think the setting and kind of the general structure of the game goes into that too. But they also have really good pacing. So, I mean, it balances those scary parts with those puzzle parts pretty well so that you're not constantly scared, which dulls the effect, or you don't constantly feel safe because you kind of never know what's going to happen. Sometimes they challenge you by putting threats into situations where you'd otherwise feel safe, and sometimes you're actually safe in a situation where you really felt like you would have been in danger. So it keeps you on your toes, and something about how all these pieces come together. I don't know. I've basically never been so scared playing a game. It's 10th to the nth degree.
I remember playing this game and my knees locking. I'm sitting in my computer chair and my knees are so stiff that I just start feeling my knees lock up and like pain. I was like, oh crap. Okay, I should probably stand up for a minute and stretch for a second because, whoo. But a thing we like to do on Indie Quest is put video games on this giant ever-growing list of recommended games called the Quest Log. We have the quest, the main quest, which is a game that we recommend you. You get in your car, you drive the next city over, you knock on a bunch of doors and ask for you trick or treat, and you get a bunch of candy, and then you go over to your uncle's house, and then you trade candies for the amount of money that you need to buy the game. Then you go home and you buy the game. Basically, it's a game you should play right away on the main quest there. And on the side quest, it is a game that, hey, we recommend, but put it in your backlog, and when you get to it, you get to it. But it's still a recommendation. Where would you want to put Amnesia: The Dark Descent?
To me, Amnesia feels like a knockout main quest. I mean, it's hard to say that the scariest game I've played doesn't deserve the highest of recommendations. So, yeah, I'm gonna toss it on the main quest unless you have any strong feelings otherwise.
Objection. No, I agree with you 100%. I think this is probably besides Resident Evil 7, which I stopped playing because I was so scared. I think this is probably like tied with that for scare factor. And I got through this game and really enjoyed it. I thought it had a really great narrative and just it brought the scares. And that's what we're looking for in this style of game.
Yeah, absolutely. So main quest material for sure. I will give everyone just one tiny piece of advice though. One, look up the cover to this game, the physical PC game cover. It's one of the worst covers you'll ever see for a game. It's so terrible at conveying the mood, but don't let that sway you. You know, get a nice chuckle out of it, but then move on to actually playing the game, which is much, much, much scarier. So yeah, main quest for sure. All right. So how about you? What'd you bring for us today? I know you got a game in the chamber.
Yes, my indie pick for today is a game I actually just played this week. It's called Inmost, INMOST, MOST. It's developed by Hidden Layer Games and published by Chucklefish Limited. This game really took me by surprise. So I saw the trailers for it. Looked like it's a 2D side-scrolling game. It has a very unique art style. It's like a chromatic look, but then they put lighting inside the world to make it have color. So you'll look at like, if you didn't have any of the lighting in this 2D game, it would look pretty much like, I don't know how to describe it. I guess black and white. And then you'll see like a blue light coming from like the bottom part of the world, and the sky will have a blue light coming out, and then the sun will have like a yellow light. So it kind of lights the environment in this very unique and just different looking game. I've never seen a game look this way. It's very visually appealing. It's one of the best 2D games I've seen in quite some time, honestly. It's just a really unique art style, and it builds that horror tension in such a good way too, because like there are creatures in the environment, and as you get deeper into like these places where you're exploring, it gets darker, and then the creatures are like shadow creature looking guys, and then it'll get like yellowy and grungy looking, and I think they just do such a good job with the art direction in this game. And the game is a Metroidvania, which is another thing that surprised me quite a bit. There's a lot of puzzles in the environment, so it does the Metroidvania thing that's really fun, where you just kind of, oh, what is that? And you go the beaten path, you're like, oh, I can't do this yet. I need an item for this. And then like later on you get the item for it. Or you see like, oh, I can't really get up there. I wonder how I can get up there. And then you trigger something later on, and then you're like, oh my god, it's that part I was exploring earlier in the game. And it does that just such a good job, man. And this game has a great storyline. Oh, I love it.
That's awesome, man. You know, I'm glad that you pointed out the art style, because I haven't played this game, but I have seen some screenshots of it, and it's just a striking game to look at. And I'm actually surprised to hear it's a Metroidvania. I guess I wouldn't have guessed that. I don't really know what I was expecting it to be, but it's cool to hear that that's the genre that it falls into. So does that mean that you have like abilities that you're unlocking or tools that you're using? What's kind of the progression system?
Okay, this is the way they tell the story is kind of from three perspectives. I don't want to give any real story plot points away too much, because I feel like this is best experience, and like I'm already recommending you play this month if you can, Steve. Get a chance to play it. I think you'd love it. There's three characters. There's a daughter character, like a young kid, and she has like barely any skill set. Like you can explore, but if you need to like climb up a ledge, you have to like move a box over and climb on the box, because she can't really jump that high, things like that. So she has like a very basic and almost non-existent moveset. And then there's kind of like a middle way point for like this kind of like this dude. It's like a dad looking character. Like, you know, he has a beard. He looks a little older. And he can jump, he can platform, but he can't really fight any of the monsters in the world. So he has to like dodge them. He has a roll. So they're like little black blobs, and they'll get like little faces and like attack you and try to jump at you. If you get close to them, you can roll through them, things like that to just not get killed by these guys. And it's pretty brutal. It's kind of like Limbo to me. Like you'll instantly die and you just like splat. I'm like, okay, you're dead. That happens quite a bit in this game. And then it gets introduced a little bit into the game, and there is like a knight character where you see his storyline, but he has like a sword and a grapple hook, and he can just kill all these blobs and just destroy them. And the main Metroidvania part of it isn't with the girl or the knight character, it's with the basic looking guy. And there are walls that you have to like get different materials to get through. So say you see a stone wall that looks like you can possibly maybe get through it. You can kind of see the other side, and it says, oh, you need a pickaxe. So you find the pickaxe and you get through the wall. And then I think there's probably like a dozen items that you get to kind of progress your way through the story and through the environment. And the environment does lead you in the right direction. I feel like I didn't really get lost. I didn't have any problems figuring out where to go next. It usually leads you in the way that you need to find, which I find frustrating sometimes with Metroidvanias. Are like, okay, I did this, and now what do I do? You know what I mean? So I didn't really have any of that experience in this game, but basically the progression is your moveset doesn't really change, but you get new items to like get through different areas of the map.
Okay, that's cool. So then, am I understanding that you're not swapping between these characters like on the fly in place? Are they all in their own separate locations, or do you need to pull them out in certain situations because they each have kind of a unique ability that is relevant?
Okay, for the way the story is laid out, it's actually three parallel, not parallel storylines, but three storylines going on at the same time. So you don't have control when you play these characters. So say you start off with the main dude, it'll just cut to a black screen. The new scene will be the girl character, and you're doing a storyline with her, a little, interaction with the environment or talking to people. I'm trying to do this as vague as possible, but it's not a hot swap situation. It kind of, as the story progresses, you switch between these characters.
Oh, that sounds awesome. And then their stories all like serving one larger narrative, I'm guessing?
Yeah, and then, dude, this game got me, man. I got a little emotional at the end. They did a really good job tying it all together. It's a thinker. You kind of have to think about. It has a lot of allegories and metaphors and things like that, where you have to like, okay, this stands for this and this stands for this. But once you start piecing it together in your head, it's just a really powerful narrative, and it got me, man. I was feeling some feels at the end there.
You're kind of selling me on this one. I'm sort of getting hyped for it. It's seeming like my kind of jam. Where's the scary factor at? So is this something that you're going to actually be scared at, or is it just kind of in like that spooky backdrop setting?
So there are creatures in the world. I will spoil one of them. It's really cool to see. So the knight, his main purpose is to fight these black shadow creatures and collect like these like orbs. They're like little, I guess, either orbs or shiny things. I don't know what they don't really tell you what they are, but they come out of the creatures, and you're collecting them, and you bring them to this guy called the Gatherer. And he's just basically this giant like creature, and he sits on this huge throne, and he has all these spikes coming out of him. He's just super ominous, and then he like collects the gems from you, and then he literally like will bash you and then like get the gems out of the knight. Wow. And like he's super creepy, and just there's no moments in this game where you're going to be like, oh my God, that's creepy, and just jump or anything. But it's just more like, man, that's just gross and kind of fucked up, a little bit. And it's a super sad story too. It's a little depressing in spots. It's very, very serious and sad. And with the main guy, as you're going deeper into these caverns and discovering things and unlocking more of the map and finding out more about the storyline, it gets even more creepy. The environments get more like grungy, and they add some more like layers to the backgrounds. So you'll be like, at first it's kind of serene, it doesn't look too bad. It looks a little creepy, a little grayscale, and then they start adding like more spooky things in the background. You'll see bats going by and different things like that. And the colors get more and more intense and just like grungy as you play. And it really just has, like, you can cut through the atmosphere in this game. It's just so thick, you know?
Ah, I'm loving it. What about the combat? Are there boss fights? Is it pretty combat heavy or pretty combat light? How often are you fighting stuff?
Okay, so for the girl, you never fight anybody with the girl. That's more of just like a story that you play through for her. With the main guy, the main combat is tricking the big bad guys to kill themselves, pretty much. So you'll have to, like, it's a little bit of a later puzzle, but there's like bells, right? You can pull these bells and move them around. So you can ring the bell and the bad guy will come out. And the only way to get over him is to jump over him when he lunges at you. So you have to basically set the bells up in the puzzle. It's like a puzzle, basically. You have to set it up just the right way to where he'll launch at you and then jump off the cliff and kill himself, pretty much. For him, it's pretty much you're just tricking guys into, like, doing things. His platforming, I feel like, is a little, like, fat. He feels fat. He feels very Mega Man, I guess. He doesn't feel super nimble. He feels like just a dude jumping around. He doesn't feel like he has superpowers or anything like that. And the other guy is the medieval knight guy, and he just kicks ass, man. He's slashing people. You have basically like a dodge attack. Like, you can dodge through bad guys and then, like, slash them in the back and stuff. So it's a lot of, there's 5 guys. You can do like an upward slash. There's 2 bats in the air. You slash them, and then you, like, dodge through this dude with claws, and then you get behind him and stab him in the back. I feel like that's very super fast-paced and just fun areas. And the thing with him is you can't jump. So it's more just you're dodging, slashing, and then you're using your grapple hook to get out of dodge after you kill some guys, which is fun.
Okay. It sounds like they do a good job blending it, right? Of some low combat sections with some pretty well done combat at the same time.
Yeah, it's very basic combat. It's kind of button mashy, but you still kind of feel like a badass. They do a good job making you feel like you're kicking some ass, killing some dudes. And I just think the way they mesh this story, like, you don't have any idea what's going on. Like, they just start throwing stuff at you. You're like, okay, there's this character did that. Then you see a house on fire. What does that have anything to do with this house? And it's just like you have no idea what's going on. But as you play through each of these storylines, you start to realize, like, oh my god, that connects to this, and this character connects to this. And it's just really, I just think they did such a good job from a narrative standpoint, and then having the variety of gameplay just makes this game just super fun. I think it only took me about maybe 3.5 to 4 hours to play through. It's not super long. It's a pretty digestible game, and I just loved it. I honestly think this is going to be one of my favorite games this year. I think it might make my top 10.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, not to circle back to what you were talking about before, but I'm looking at some screenshots of it now, and this game looks great. Mm-hmm. It's got this, like, you know, it's like desaturated, but every level sort of has like one primary color that's based on the lighting of that area. Oh, it's very striking. It looks like the natural evolution of like Game Boy graphics taken to the absolute maximum in a way.
I 100% agree with that, and I think that's the best thing about the game. This game is just, I don't know, man. I feel like I found a really nice little gem here. Like, if it's not copyrighted, right? Hidden gem. But I think this is just one of those that I feel like it, especially during this season, it's worth playing, man. I loved it.
It's, you know, it sounds good when in my head I'm mapping out. I'm like, okay, I have what, 5 streams left for Halloween, and it's going to take me how many to beat Amnesia and how many to beat Dimension. Like, do I have time to fit this one in? Because, yeah, it looks really cool. I definitely added it to the wish list. I mean, it looks really striking. What's the soundtrack like?
The soundtrack is great, man. It's very in the background, but I feel like they do a good job of having that creepy, a little haunting. It's a lot of orchestration and a lot of strings, you know, what you're going to expect from something with like a creepy atmosphere. But I feel like they swell and they build the music in such a great way, and especially during this story part. Dude, if you can get to the last, like, there's some really great story parts at the end. There's some just like awesome scenes with some amazing music. It just like really like shreds a little bit there at the end, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, this is awesome. So it kind of goes anywhere from this creepy ambience to like big boisterous orchestration, which is awesome.
Man, I mean, you sold me on it. Anything else related to the game that you think is worth mentioning? Anything you want to call out?
Yes, I do want to say I did have a little bit of a performance issues in the Switch version, which is the one I played. It's only on Switch, PC, and mobile right now, but I think that it's playable, but it did have some frame rate hiccups, and the way I combated it was basically I had to restart the game a couple times, and it completely smoothed back out. So I feel like when it's loading in this unique look to it, I feel like they must be doing some kind of trick in the background with the lighting, and the lighting makes the game lag a little bit or something like that. Because when I see a lot of like environmental effects and like glowy things on the screen, it starts chugging a little bit on the Switch. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Pausing the game, going out, coming back into the game, fixed it, and then occasionally you can just play through it and it just kind of fixes itself. So on the technical end, that's the only downside I would say, but I just think this game as a package just really shines, and I think they did a great job with the narrative, the atmosphere, the music, the gameplay, and I think it's a must play.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think that kind of wraps us right into the last question we have to ask is, when it comes to the quest log, you feeling like this is a main quest or is this a side quest?
So yeah, I just said it's a must play. So it's on the quest log, 100% locked in. Like I said, it's going to be most likely, unless something pushes it out, I could see this being like maybe the bottom half of my top 10, but it's still going to be there of like, this defined my 2019, really. It's 2020. We all know it's 2020. It's going to be one of those games that is like, dude, this is a shining moment for 2020 for me. I loved it. It's absolutely one of my favorite games I've played in a long time.
Now, you said it's a must play. It's on the quest log. I think you meant to say it's a main quest. It's
a main quest on the quest log. We quest everything here, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds like a pretty obvious main quest to me. I mean, I'm 100% sold.
Well, we came. We talked about spooky stuff. We brought 2 excellent games that made it on the main quest, and I think that's going to call it an episode for today. How do you feel?
Feeling good. I'm not surprised we got 2 main quests here. I mean, our first Halloween episode, we're probably going to bring some heat. I mean, it's all heat, but some strong heat. So, yeah, I mean, just so many cool horror games to play.
And honestly, dude, I saw the trailer for Inmost. I've been wanting to play it, and I was worried. I was like, what if I hate this game? And then I come to Indie Quest, I'm like, it's all right. But I'm glad it went the other way, you know?
Yeah, me too. It's been sort of like on the outskirts of my radar a little bit since it came out. I think it was an Apple Arcade game.
Yeah.
But, it's always nice to sit down, talk through the games like this, and get a good feel for what they are to really solidify that I need to bump it up in the old backlog.
And that's what we're here for. Thank you guys so much for listening to this. What are we going to call it? Spooktober? Spooky Halloween episode? Indie Quest? Something like that. Whatever the title says, the spooky Halloween episode of Indie Quest. And pluggy plug time. You can find me, Frantic Josh, at Frantic Society on Twitter. Where can people find you, Steve, on the internet?
You can find me at Blinkoom on Twitter and on Twitch. Twitch is where you can catch me every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday streaming at 7 Central. In October we've been streaming horror games, but we're always streaming all kinds of stuff, often some cool indie stuff. But if you want to stay up to date with the show and not just one of us, you can find us at IndieQuestPod on Twitter.
Also, we love it when you guys send us community, like indie thoughts about the podcast, about games you've been playing, any questions. And down the road, we do want to have like a community section where we read some of these emails. So if you guys want to send us an email, it's going to be at indiequestpod@gmail.com, and you might hear them on the show. Now, Steve, why don't you sign us off and say a good spooky goodbye to the folks out there?
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy those spooky games.
This Halloween, Toys R Us is your Halloween headquarters. You'll find every trick or treat under the moon. A monstrous selection of costumes and a dungeon full of decorations at prices so low, you'll howl. So this Halloween, bring the entire family to Toys R Us for a Halloween selection so huge. It's scary.